Good evening. Thank you for joining us this evening. My name is Brenda Bowen. I'm one of the information officers with Rocky Mountain Team 1. We're here to provide you an update on the current status of the Wapiti fire. If you can put the agenda up for me. You'll see we have a pretty full agenda this morning, very similar to, or this evening, very similar to what we did at our first meeting here in Stanley. We do have to be out of this room at 5 till. There is a meeting in here tonight after we get done with this one. So what we ask is that you hold your questions until the end. We'll get through all of the speakers, and then we do have maps outside, and we will have people out at those maps and available to answer any of the questions that you have. So with that, I should also mention that we are streaming live on Facebook. So for those of you that are watching online, please enter your questions in the chat, and we have information officers that are watching that, and we'll answer those for you as well. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Lance Martin to provide a current situation on the fire.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Lance Martin. I'm a field operations trainee for the Wapiti Fire. And you guys got the map up? So I'm going to give you guys a good round robin of where we're at and where we're going in the future. So we're going to start out, and before I get started, I just want to, for the folks that are over in Chalice or Loman or anybody that out there online, welcome. And yeah, we hope you guys, if you have questions, make sure you put them on in the chat there. I'm going to start down in the southwest corner of the fire in the Bear Creek Summer Home area. We still have a heavy presence with resources in there, and we're going to continue that for the next couple of days. Just keeping an eye on all the structures in there, make sure we have any heat that's next to the structures, and make sure we have that good secured and mopped up around any of the structures. We are starting to backhaul some of our hose and equipment and things out of there, but things are starting to look pretty good. As we come over towards the Warm Springs landing strip, we got some more resources coming in there today. They came in today and probably have some more coming in there tomorrow. But as far as where the fire is at, it's still just north of the Warm Springs landing strip. Got crews in there assessing where the fire is at, where it's growing to, and then doing a little bit of firing around the Warm Springs landing strip when needed. But their overall intent there is just to keep fire north of Highway 21. So we can continue to assess other options for indirect and direct lines. I'll be honest with you in there. It is some fairly rough terrain, but we haven't seen a whole lot of fire growth in there the last day. If we do see it, it's just a slow backing fire paralleling the 21 corridor there on the north side and around the landing strip there. As we move down the 21 corridor, a lot of the crews are prepping the 21 corridor. And as we work into Seven Peaks and Tenax and the Sourdough area, starting to get crews in there doing structure assessment and structure prep, starting to get a lot of hose in there too, doing hose lay, sprinkler systems and things like that to prepare in the event if and when this fire wants to kind of move down, just because we're limited on options in here on where we can put folks in there safely. So identifying all the values, and we're protecting them to the best of our ability. So as we move up to the north, still in this area right here, we're still not seeing a whole lot of growth. There's quite a few areas in there where it's just kind of checked up in natural features, but we're definitely keeping an eye on it. As we move up into a little bit further north, the Bull Trout Lake area, very successful day yesterday, bringing fire from Highway 21 towards the Bull Trout Lake. Very successful. They got that today. They just pretty much had resources in there securing what they've burned out and just keeping an eye on any fire behavior as it cleans up towards the main edge of the fire. So, and then they had another hotshot crew show up in there today, so they're looking at some other containment features and lines and areas in here working towards Martin Lake, if anybody's familiar in the room. So as we move a little bit further north towards Boy Scout, so in between Bull Trout and the Boy Scout camp, got a lot of crews and resources in there prepping prepping the road, the 21 road, heading towards the Boy Scout camp. As we move over onto the east side of the fire, east and north, Boy Scout camp, we still have a very heavy presence in there with a lot of resources, doing structure protection, testing out the sprinkler systems we got set up there in the event that we see some of this fire come out of Hatcher, potentially cross 21, just so we're ready and prepared for it. As we move down into a little bit further on the 21 corridor, moving south towards the Valley Creek area, we still have crews in here assessing. This is looking all pretty good. It's just kind of backing down into some of these road systems in here. In the event we need to do some firing operations, we will. And the reason we're doing that, if we get a strong southerly wind, southeast wind, etc., we're protecting our values up here at the Boy Scout camp. So on the other side of this fire activity that's on the east side of 21 here, this is all looking pretty good. I'm not seeing any movement out of here, kind of in the Valley Creek area. We still have resources, checking out the Valley Creek structures in here. Everything's looking pretty good for right now. As we move into the Crooked Creek and Homestead areas, still have a very, very heavy presence of resources in there, keeping eyes on things and mopping up any hot spots where needed. So that'll continue for the coming days. So as we move down into a little bit, the spot fire that we had from a couple of days ago that's fairly close to Lower Stanley, things are looking really good. The folks on the ground have been getting around that thing, keeping an eye on it. We have no new growth and no spot fires, still gridding, mopping up, doing a really good job in there. So we're starting to look really, really good in there. Feeling pretty comfortable with that. As we move in down towards the Iron Creek community, we had a very successful burnout operation last night. Our indirect line came up to the wilderness area, and we basically fired this out. And our whole intent here is, once again, we know that there is a probability that this fire could come out of the wilderness and come back down, but the reason we put that in and are keeping a good eye on it and getting good depth in there, we're just trying to build a buffer so we have time here behind the Iron Creek community to work towards this to the south towards the Bench Lake fire from earlier this summer with an indirect option, because we know there's potential for the fire to come out here potentially based on weather, and then all this stuff in here in our Division whiskey on the southern end of the fire. There is some potential for that to come out with long-term forecasts and fuels, so we just want to be prepared for it. So that's why we did all that work there just above the Iron Creek community. So that's your operational update, and that's where we're going, what we've been doing, and I'll be sticking around after the meeting for any further questions. So thank you.
Thank you, Lance. And now we will have an update on the weather with incident meteorologist Woody Unruh.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Woody Unruh, and I'm an incident meteorologist trainee working with the Rocky Mountain team. Real briefly, if you were at the meeting when Jeff was doing that, an incident meteorologist is a forecaster who works with the National Weather Service and is specifically trained to deploy to wildfires to provide site-specific weather forecasting. Myself, personally, I work out of the Duluth, Minnesota office, but I am out here working very closely with the Rocky Mountain team. Now, what we like to show here is what's called the weather matrix. It's basically a quick snapshot in time showing the weather forecast over the next 6 days here. And it goes from basically 3 different levels. You have green, yellow, and red, showing low threat conditions going up more towards those critical fire weather conditions that could lead to more active fire behavior. And as you can see, unfortunately, there is a lot of red on this map. We have a lot of sunny days ahead of us. There's high pressure currently in place over the area, and that's expected to stick around for at least the next several days here into the weekend. So you can see the top bar there with cloud cover. Not many clouds in the area, so you have lots of sunshine that's expected. Temperatures are also going to be increasing, so we are going to be getting up into the mid 70s mid to upper 70s for those temperatures. And then in addition, the main thing is the relative humidity or the amount of moisture in the atmosphere. The drier the conditions, the more those fuels are able to dry out and be available to burn. So if we look at our minimum relative humidity, so this is the amount of moisture in the afternoon, we have a few dry days ahead of us. It's going to be very dry, around 10 to 15%, which critical or very dry conditions or critically dry relative humidity is typically around is at 15%. So we are going to be below that value for at least the next couple days. And in addition, our maximum RH, this is typically what you expect to see around 6 in the morning as right before the sun rises. So our peak, what we like to call relative humidity recovery, is going to be very dry for the next few days as well. So we're not going to be having a lot of moisture rebounding overnight. It's going to be basically dry for the next 3 days as this high pressure system remains in place. Fortunately, I guess the one piece of good news on this is that winds are going to be not on the strong side, so nothing like what we saw a couple days ago ahead of that cold front that came through when the winds were very whipping. We're going to be having some calmer winds. Now, I guess the one downside to that is the smoke. As you all saw, we have some pretty heavy smoke, and that's due to these light winds in the area. So smoke will be sticking around for a few days, but fortunately we won't have what we had a couple days ago with those very strong southwesterly winds, and then they shifted to the northwest following that cold front. So looking ahead a little bit further out in this weather matrix, we do see some improvement. Some of those red blocks do start to disappear from that. We kind of go a bit more towards those yellow and green. However, one thing to note is on Sunday into Monday, we do have some pretty high mixing heights, and this is basically how unstable the atmosphere is or how supportive it is of vertical motion. So we have some pretty high mixing height days coming up on Sunday and Monday, so that will improve the smoke in the area, but could also increase possibly fire activity with those conditions. Going ahead into Monday, that is going to be our next chance for some precipitation. There is a low pressure system moving in just off the west coast, and that's going to be bringing some moisture into the area, kind of similar to what we had a little over a week ago when we had some of those scattered showers in the area. That potential will be returning on Monday. And then going out a little bit more into the extended, unfortunately, we do have some drier conditions returning to the area as we get back into a pattern of high pressure. And with that, I'll be standing by for questions after, and thank you.
Thank you. And now we will have an update on the fire behavior with Glenn Lewis.
Good evening. Glenn Lewis, Fire Behavior Analyst with Rocky Mountain Team 1. So if you were here at the last public meeting, we kind of talked about how we got to where we were at and the kind of conditions that were driving fire behavior. And so I just want to take a quick step back to that for the folks that weren't here. And then we'll go through that and catch up to today, and then kind of look to the future. So what we talked about before is the fact that in this area the fuels are very dry, and fuels to us are anything that will burn. Okay, so that's trees, grass, brush, dead and woody material, all of that kind of stuff. So all of that stuff is really very dry, especially now. When the fire first started, some of the live fuels, we hadn't gotten far enough into the season. They had a little bit of moisture in them, and they were kind of checking up the fire. Here we are now a couple weeks later, and those are starting to cure, kind of that natural thing that happens as we head towards fall. So we had those very dry fuels, an abundant amount of those dry fuels. And so the fire was burning very up high elevation in there, and it wasn't really moving a whole lot. You would see it kick up a little bit, and then it would kind of lay down, and it wasn't making a lot of progress. And that's basically because what would happen at that case is we call it when things come into alignment. You have those heavy concentrations of very dry fuels. And when they come into alignment with the slope, especially if those heavy fuels are at the bottom where the fire is, then we call that into alignment, and they start working together. And so the fire would run up the hill. If you think about fire flow, how fires flow a little bit like water, only except the opposite way. So water likes to run downhill, likes to run down valley. Fires tend to want to run uphill. And they want to run up valley, etc. So just like that, when the water gets down to the bottom of something, it slows down or stops, right? Same thing. Fire runs to the top, it runs out of fuel, it's no longer in alignment, it lays down. And so then what it has to do is figure out how to get back down the slope so it can get back in alignment to run back up again. So that's what you would see. You would see these pulsing kind of things, and we still see that on the fire today, where things come into alignment, the fire picks up activity, and it's no longer, once it falls out of alignment, then it tends to lie down until it gets back into alignment. One of the complicating factors there, because fire doesn't behave exactly opposite of water, what water doesn't have is the ability to throw spot fires. And so in a lot of cases, when it runs to the top of that ridge, yes, it lays down, but those embers get cast out in front of it, and it lands on the next ridge, or it lands into more dry fuels, abundant fuels, and so it will tend to take off. And so it can kind of skip ahead a little bit there, and then the main fire has to catch up to it. And so it kind of becomes this propagating kind of process. So that's what we had. And then again, what we talked about. So that's alignment, topography, and the fuels, and that can cause a fire to grow. But then what we had about the last Thursday, Friday, is we had very hot, we had very dry, and we had very windy weather. And those things now that becomes an alignment factor, right? Those dry fuels get even drier, the air is drier, it's hot, the temperature of the fuels is warmer. Again, all these things help propagate it, and then the wind comes up, and then that really helps feed the fire. When you get wind, slope, and fuels in alignment, then those are the big three, right? So that tends to really flow. And so that's what we kind of had happen up through that. And then about on Saturday, we had some moisture come in. Sunday, it kind of lingered around a little bit, so the fire laid down. And so that's about where we last talked. So we'll go from there. So if you could bring up the fire progression map. So it might be a little bit hard for some of the folks in the back to see here, but I just want to talk about this and kind of, so this helps paint the picture for what we can expect in the future. So if you look at this purple color here, so this was where the fire was as of about 2 o'clock in the morning on Monday was the purple color there. I'm sorry, on Friday. I skipped ahead. On Friday, this was the purple color. Then we got those really strong winds on Friday, and so the blue color is where the fire basically ended up on Friday evening. There's a couple extra days in here because we couldn't get our infrared. The infrared couldn't see through the smoke, and so this also includes Saturday and Sunday, but what I can tell you is that the fire grew very little on Saturday and Sunday because of that moisture that we talked about. So most of this blue all the way around, this lighter blue color, is what happened on Friday. Again, kind of laid down on Saturday and Sunday because we had the moisture come in. We didn't have the high winds. Things were more favorable in terms of checking up the fire. So then, so then we got to, if I remember, this would be Monday. The green is on Monday. And you can see we started to dry out a little bit. Didn't have high winds, but it did start to dry out. So you can see where some of the green areas here started to move just a little bit. And again, that's kind of that natural progression without the wind blowing it, without a bunch of alignment. You can see that it obviously had a little bit of alignment there. It made a movement there a little bit, not a lot. So that was Monday because we were still starting to dry out on Monday. We talked about how we were really concerned Monday going into Tuesday and Wednesday because we were expecting those high winds to come back up, and we were going to get a wind shift as well. So the yellow here is Tuesday. Again, we had the wind wind come back up near critical weather. We did not have them as strong as we did on Thursday and Friday, but we did have stronger winds coming out of the southwest here, and you can see what happened. It pushed the fire out in these directions here. This filled in a little bit, you can see, because we had fire on both sides there, and we had a little bit of slope effect there. So that was setting up something that we were really concerned about, which was the next day, which was northwest winds coming like this. So they did do a bunch of work down in here, taking advantage of that weather on Friday and doing some firing operations down here, trying to make sure that this Highway 21 secured. Again, as we talked about, taking advantage, us controlling the fire behavior instead of the fire behavior controlling us. And so those were very successful operations coming down into here and trying to get this, as Lance was talking about, getting some fire down in here and some depth to protect it. We did get a spot on Tuesday across Highway 21 there, and we kind of anticipated that. The fire behavior model showed that. Intuitively, the operations guys, what's amazing to me is I run computer models, and they already know what the computer models say. So they were prepared for that spot fire over there. They had the people in place. They had a plan in place, and they jumped right on this thing, even though the wind was, again, it landed on 3/4 of the way up the slope, so it was very much in alignment with very strong winds and dry fuels, and it got a good head of steam, and they jumped on that thing really fast. And they were able to get a line around it that night. And I can tell you that both Woody and I sat in this building waiting for that cold front to come through and watching out for those crews because we knew that the northwest winds were going to come in the middle of the night. Once it did come through, it did have a little bit of moisture with it, so it cooled off. And by that time, they had already gotten pretty much around it. And so at that point, we felt secure that we knew what the conditions were. We called the operations folks. They felt they had a good handle on it. And Woody and I got to go get sleep. They stayed out there and kept working. So that was really nice of them to give us some time off. So they did a great job of catching that. They were, like I said, they were in place because we kind of anticipated, again, that alignment. We knew that the fire was going to get pushed in that direction in several spots where we had some heat there. So it held. They did a great job. They held on to it yesterday as well. So that's why you don't see any additional movement. The red areas are what happened yesterday when we had that northwest wind change. So you can see again, nothing happened there. They kept that there, and again, as you can see, once we got again conditions had dried out. We had abundant fuel out in here, and the winds came this way, and so you can see that smoke that everybody could see out there. You could see these columns pop up. That's what you were seeing here is these areas here, especially out in here. These popped up several times. And consuming the fuels that were out there. And again, we talked about this. You could see previously those strong wind gusts. And what they were doing, this is kind of interesting, is that, again, we talked about how fire flows naturally in the opposite way that water does. In this case here, this wind coming down off these high elevations, off the sawtooths, came down here. And it pushed the fire out these ridges where the winds were the strongest. And so that's how it made that progress out there. And you can see on Tuesday, when we had that southwest wind again, that's exactly what it did along this ridge right there. And that's what allowed this to spread. And that was the concern that was down here to take those actions, again, to take advantage of us being able to control the fire behavior versus it controlling us. So you did see that again. You did see some of that come up again. The winds were not anywhere near as strong as when the fire made its big pushes. So you can see that it didn't make as much. You can see it still though has lots of potential right there because it did fill in pretty good. But it ran into the previous burn scar, and of course it stopped there. So you can see kind of all the way around. There was some of that happening, and again as it dries out, we anticipate that to continue. So moving forward now, to both today and going forward, Woody talked about we do have very hot and dry weather, but we don't have those strong winds again. So we do have conditions that are conducive to the fire burning and for it to consume some of these fuels that are available to it. But we don't have those strong wind events, at least in the near term, that we can see out in front of us that would really push it. So. What I would mention again is that all of this fire spread here, when we talked about the spotting potential, throwing the embers, when it made these runs, what I can guarantee, this, again, you can see one of them started way out there, right? So, but even within these, I can guarantee you that there was a bunch of spots in here, and that helped that fire spread. So spotting is a major concern, and that's why the more distance that you can get of the black here between when the fire is advancing, the better chance you have of catching, of containing it. It can't spot as far away, right? So that's significant. So getting back to that, you can see Also, there's numerous fire scars in here. Up in here, the Halstead fire, you can see yesterday it did flare up a little bit up out there, and that's because there's a little spot out there that still had some green trees in it. And so it did consume that, and now it's laid back down. We didn't see a whole lot of movement out of it today there. So again, getting back to where we're headed with this is we do have the hot and dry weather, and so we are going to anticipate we're going to still see some of these areas kick up and produce some smoke and consume some of these fuels. And so that's going to happen where we have these hot fire edges, and where we haven't gotten a buffer like Highway 21 or something like that. So I just want to kind of cover that, and again, we do see down in here. You may see some smoke down here on the south end too, as it's back down that slope. Some of those slopes. As it's going to get into alignment with some fuels, and you are going to see some smoke kind of in most of the places around here. But again, right now we're not seeing one of these big wind events or this big alignment events happening in the near future here. So we'll see smoke. I will say, I forgot about this. I just want to mention this because this is really. You see that over here yesterday, how much this fire spread. One of the factors was this was upwind. And one of the important factors that we talked about before, if you remember, is sunlight. When we get clear air and the sunlight hits these fuels, it raises the temperature up enough, and that's enough for it to get going. And with these heavy fuels, when they start producing heat, they're really good at continuing to build that heat. So over here, blue skies. Blue skies. If you were over here yesterday, it was not a cloud in the sky. You could see however far you want to see. All that smoke came down right over the top of Stanley in this area yesterday. And I can tell you that when I got out here and when I got out here, I think there was probably 20 degrees difference. That's how thick that smoke was. That's how much it had changed the temperature. And that's part of the reason that we didn't see any increased fire behavior down here as well. So that smoke is really a factor. And as Woody said, we are going to see some of that clearing air, and where that smoke will clear out. As unpleasant as the smoke is, it's just like cloud cover. It creates shade, and it does tend to slow down fire spread. So one of the things that I would. It's a double-edged sword. We're going to clear out some of that air, and the smoke's going to loft up, right? But it does have the potential to increase fire behavior. So some of it will hang around, and I'll let the air resources people talk about that. But it will, because there's not strong winds either to push it out, so it's going to kind of seem like it's just kind of hanging around up there a little bit. And so I'll let them talk about that. But that's how we got here. That's what we're looking at going forward. Again, it's very dry, and the very heavy fuels, very inaccessible terrain, and so that kind of sets up with how we're having to deal with this.
Thank you, Glenn. And we'll turn it over to Amber Ortega, our Air Resource Advisor.
And I'm also going to bring up Katie Sashery, ARA trainee. So that was a great setup, because if you get fire weather, you get fire behavior, what comes next? Smoke, right? That was the star of the end of that show. You need the fire triangle. A lot of you guys are familiar with that. You need heat, you need the fuels, and you need oxygen. So when you get a lot of smoke laying down like we have now, that fire has a little bit less oxygen, so it can be less active. Unfortunately, so do we down here, right? I feel like we should all give a collective throat clearing, right? Yeah, permission out there, because I need to do it too. So Air Resource Advisors, we are smoke specialists. We get dispatched by the Interagency Wildland Fire Air Quality Response Program out to wildfires. We help the incident command teams, and we help the public, because that smoke, it doesn't know any land management boundaries. It can move all over the place. We've smoked out Boise, we smoked out salmon, right? That's this fire. What we do is work with the incident meteorologist to get the fire weather. We work at the fire behavior analyst to get the fire behavior, and then we help forecast the smoke. So we put out smoke monitors and smoke sensors all over this community, at the incident command post, at the spike camps, everywhere from Lowman all the way up to North Fork. We've put some smoke monitors out there so we get the data to know what's really making it down here to the ground. If you've got blue skies, then you can see the smoke columns. And when you see that popping up, we all get some feelings about that. When you see smoke, that also gives the firefighters an indicator of what's going on with the fire. That means you're breathing in clean air if you can see that smoke in the distance. When you're down here with the haze everywhere, that's when the smoke's making it down to the ground. So we're out here to help with roadway safety, visibility, firefighter safety, and then also public health, right? Most of us have experienced smoke a lot. We live in areas where there's a lot of fire. We've had a lot of smoke in our lungs, and it impacts everything we do: recreation, our ability to get out, get where we're going. The things that we monitor are carbon monoxide, which a lot of us are familiar with that. We get some education about that in school, but also PM 2.5. That's particulate matter that is less than 2.5 microns in diameter. That sounds like a whole bunch of science, right? What that means is it's really small. It's actually smaller than your blood cells. So not only does it irritate your respiratory, but it can get cardiovascular symptoms too. That's why it's cumulative. So 1 or 2 days of smoke, no big deal, we're used to it. 3, 4, 5 days, we start getting short with each other. You start getting that need to clear the throat, because each additional day in smoke makes it more impactful to you. So we also put out a smoke outlook every day. You can get that from our NC Web and our Facebook. We forecast the smoke from Boise all the way up to Salmon. Our area here, we're working with the Mountain West Fire. They also have air resource advisors, and their smoke can impact us. Our smoke can impact them. We work with them to cover this whole area. We put out that outlook also on the fire and smoke map. So if you want to know what the air is doing right here, right now, you want some numbers for that, it is fire.airnow.gov. You can also get that from our Facebook and our NC Web. And that will put out the color of the air quality index of the monitors and sensors we have out. That air quality index is a way to look at the data without knowing micrograms per meter cubed and all that stuff. It's kind of a red light, green light scale. Green is good. Yellow is moderate. Orange is unhealthy for sensitive groups. So if you're somebody with asthma, or you've had COPD, or you're just real sensitive to smoke, orange is that watch out. Above that, you get to unhealthy, very unhealthy, and then hazardous. Unfortunately, we've been in the hazardous category quite a bit here the last day and a half. When you're at hazardous, everybody's going to feel the impacts. Even if you're super healthy, you've never breathed in smoke at all, your lungs are, Olympic swimmer, you're still going to feel the impacts at that hazardous level. So I'm going to hand the mic over to Katie, and she's going to give you the forecast for smoke for the next couple days and what you can do about it to find clean air where you're at.
Thanks, Amber. If we can go ahead and pull up it's already up. Great. So this is what it looks like whenever you see the fire and smoke map. It'll automatically geolocate to your location. So you don't have to look for anything. It'll automatically populate with this map. You'll see a blue square and oftentimes a blue message up at the top whenever it moves to a place with a smoke outlook. If you just click on that blue square, it'll automatically pull up the outlook that we issue every day. So for Stanley itself, like the incident meteorologist and the fire behavior analyst said, we're kind of in a holding pattern, much of the same. Generally hazardous air quality here. These little T's are specific monitors that scientists like myself and Amber deploy onto wildfire incidents itself. This T is at the Lowman Ranger Station on Highway 21. This T is at the Sawtooth Recreation Area office just along Highway 75. Amber and I actually just got back from deploying a third one. We put it up at Valley Springs Spike Camp. So you'll see tomorrow, once it starts transmitting the data, another T that will be up near the Spike Camp up there. So you can kind of expect this pattern to persist not only through tomorrow, but into Labor Day weekend, I know that that's going to be unfortunate, especially for people of this area living in such a beautiful place. It's going to be hard to try to stay inside, but all that you can do, at least for the smoke impact personally, is try to find as much clean air as you can. Most often that's going to be indoors, but you kind of have to make a personal determination for yourself. Is it going to be better for your mental health to get outside and take a walk? Sometimes, yes. And you're going to have to weigh the impacts personally versus being cooped up inside, having a bunch of cabin fever, or having smoke impact for 1 hour. So definitely make the best choices for you based on what you know about yourself. As far as staying inside, a lot of people's homes, you come in and out, you open the windows, on a nice day to air out your home. Not the best idea whenever the fire and smoke map reads hazardous weather outside, hazardous smoke. It's easier to keep a clean house clean than it is to clean a dirty house. So do your best to limit the time that your doors and windows are open whenever you are experiencing hazardous smoke. However, whenever we are under favorable air quality conditions, you should go ahead, open up your doors, open up your windows. The smoke can stay trapped inside of your house, especially during long periods of smoke at hazardous levels. So keep an eye on our monitors, on the low-cost purple air sensor monitors, and whenever you have the opportunity, go ahead and refresh that air inside of your house. Are you guys familiar with box fans? They're very simple. You can find them at most general hardware stores. If the bad air does get inside of your house, we highly recommend that you build a low-cost air quality filter. It's very simple. You only need 3 things: a box fan, a furnace filter, and a couple of bungee cords. You would be surprised if you put this filter behind the air intake on your box fan and stick 2 bungee cords to the back of it, you're going to drop your smoke levels by almost 50%. The higher MERV rating that you can get on these furnace filters, the more it's going to filter that smoke out. And I would recommend to keep this running whenever we have unhealthy for sensitive groups or above air quality conditions for your community. The last thing that I want to talk about is transportation safety. That's definitely under the umbrella of our expertise. Highway 75 has been getting a lot of reduced visibility because of these heavy smoke impacts. Make sure that you're driving with your lights on. Make sure that you have your hazards on if you feel like it's appropriate. Take it slow. A lot of the wildlife are also fleeing the heavy smoke, so you're going to see enhanced wildlife activity on the highways. So just make sure to keep yourself and your community safe. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now we will hear from Custer County Sheriff Levi Madel.
Good evening, everybody. Can we put up the operational map, please? Oh, evacuation map will work too. Okay, so bad news first. Highway 21 still closed and will remain closed because of the fire activity, and we have a lot of firefighting apparatuses, a lot of people working out there. We're doing what we can. People have come in with requests, okay? Shut this off, turn that on, help us do this, help us do that. We're trying to get through some of that. We're limited as far as what we can do to help you get back in there to get anything done or get the firefighters to help do that. But we'll try. Keep that call coming in, but understand our staffing in that portion is limited, okay? We are using the fire crews out there to do some of that, but when we ask fire crews to turn sprinklers on, shut sprinklers off, check on things, we're taking them away from the firefighting, okay? So understand that. Be patient with us. Okay? Zone 1, including cow camp, all the homes along 21, including Iron Creek, is still in a go status. Stanley here, Stanley Upper is in a set status. This spot fire right here that popped over into Nippentuck placed Lower Stanley and the Gateway community into a go status. They worked really hard on it. They put a lot of effort into it to keep it from spreading, and they were successful. As of 5 o'clock, my team has put out notice that Lower Stanley and Gateway communities have been lifted to a set status. Okay? It is no longer in go status. Now, it is back into a set status, just like Stanley. That, however, okay, means that it doesn't mean that it's just free to repopulate and we can just get right back in there. Okay? If you're gone from there and you have no reason to really get back in there, okay, maybe it's best just to stay out of there for right now and let the firefighting attention focus on if this thing does decide to spot. Fire is dynamic and it's constantly changing, okay? So this still could act goofy, if that's a technical term, okay? So if this thing decides to stand up and start walking on us again, we might just have to put it right back in a go status. So understand that. But at 8 o'clock, the set status will be in place. And the reason we went till 8 o'clock is to allow the firefighters to move some fire hose, move some of the trimmings out of the way, kind of get some of their stuff moved out of the way so that we weren't, it wasn't impeding on you, and it wasn't, they had time to actually get in there and get that done, okay? Casino Creek. Casino Creek has been moved to a ready status. It has come out of the set status, and it's now in a ready status, okay? We had 3 occupants up in there, and aside from the broadcast, we also sent an officer up there to notify them. Highway 75 is open all the way to Chalice, all the way to Ketchum, and beyond. 75 is still open, and we don't have any intention of closing it, not unless Mr. Sneaky over here decides he's going to stand up and do something, okay? All right. Zone 3, down here, is in a set status, just because we got fire creeping around over here on this side, and we don't know what it's going to do. Operations is keeping me informed of what's going on there, and this will be updated as needed. I'll be sticking around to answer any questions, okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff. And now we'll hear from Randy Pipel.
Hi, my name's Randy Pipel. I'm the Bureau Chief of Consumer Services for the Idaho Department of Insurance. And I know you didn't come here to talk about insurance, but I wanted to give you a few things you might need to think about as you're evacuating or whatever. I've got a slide. Yes, okay. So the Department of Insurance does regulate insurance in the state, all of the insurance companies. Part of my team is Consumer Affairs, and our job is to help the public. We answer questions about general insurance questions. We also help them if they're having issues with their insurance company or with their agent or whatever. We take complaints. I do have cards out there with this information. I had a nice QR code that you could scan, but I broke it this morning. The good news is we've been dealing with fires all summer, and for the most part, in almost all situations, the insurance companies have been acting appropriately. We're hoping this will continue. Why we're not able to tell those insurance companies what claims to pay and which ones not to pay, that's a contractual situation between you and your insurance company, and the courts get to make those final decisions. We do hold their licenses, so a little nudge from us occasionally can get things moving pretty well. So if you have experienced a property loss and you're having issues with your insurance company, or they're not getting back to you, or you don't know how to file a claim or whatever, please reach out and we can help out there. For those of you that are in one of the evacuation statuses, let me briefly talk about what you need to take with you or do from an insurance standpoint if you experience a loss. The very first thing is the contact information for your insurance agent and insurance company. While you're doing that, make sure they have your up-to-date information. A lot of us have changed contact information. You may not have that landline anymore and you're only using your cell phone or whatever, but if you've had your insurance for a while, they may have all the information. We know that there are insurance companies in the area. They may be trying to reach out to you if they don't have your contact information or they have old contact information. That's not going to happen. The second thing you need to make sure you have is copies of all of your insurance policies, not just your homeowner's insurance policy. Remember, things like cars, boats, ATVs, all your toys are probably on separate insurance policies. You want to make sure you have copies of those as well. Your agent or company should be able to provide those to you. But better yet, we all have cell phones, most insurance companies have apps, or they have a web page that you can get that information on. If that's the case, make sure you have your login information with you. If you are evacuated, let your agent or company know once you're safe. And if you have some time, so those of you in the ready and set status, use your smartphone and make a video of your home. Now that may sound weird. Why a video? Why not pictures? The reason I suggest video over pictures is you can talk to yourself on the video. So you can say, in this closet I have X, and we purchased this bedroom set from Costco last year for X amount of money. It may sound goofy, but it's extremely helpful when you're going through a claim situation and trying to remember what was in that house. Pay particular attention to items that may be valuable but that are very difficult or impossible to replace. For example, antiques or artwork. If you have some sort of proof with those items of what they're worth, take that with you, take a picture of that proof, and it'll help in the claim situation. Finally, if you have time, clear things away from your home. You guys have all heard that about defensible space. These guys will tell you it really helps. I've seen pretty amazing things up north on a fire up there where they were able to save houses, and the one next door was totally gone, but it was because of the defensible space they were able to save these houses. So finally, if you have any questions or concerns about the insurance, please reach out to this team. We're there from 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. Obviously, this Monday is a holiday, but we'll be there Tuesday through Friday, 8 to 5, and that's all I had. Thanks. I'll be here for questions afterwards.
Thank you very much. And now we will hear from Mayor Steve Boddy.
Wait a minute, I didn't know I was on the agenda. Didn't see my name up there. I would like to share a few thoughts. I don't have any fancy maps or charts or anything. These guys have all those, and they're great. The actions that the team took west of town to protect us out there required a lot of careful analysis. Excuse me. And those were not easy decisions. I can guarantee you that. But it worked. And the team has very powerful, impressive analytical tools that they're at in the meetings very effectively. Fighters hard out. Spent a little bit of time with them a few days ago. Smoke's getting to my throat here a little bit, but anyway, they made me suit up in firefighting gear to go out there, of course. And for a moment there, I thought they were going to put me on the line. That I wasn't sure they had actually filled that last resource order, that I might be it. Desperate for. I'm very appreciative of all of the understanding and support from the community. It's been great. A lot of people have been pitching in to help out with this effort. But these are difficult times and traumatic times, and it's not over. But a big thanks to all these people here in the team and, of course, the firefighters for protecting us so far. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Mayor. And now, Kirk, it is your turn. Our agency administrator, Kirk Flanagan.
Sorry, I've gone after Levi every meeting. Would you put the closure map up, please, real quick? Sorry to have to meet again under these circumstances, but the team has done a good job sharing public information and gathering the public. I will just lead in what Levi said and what Steve said a little bit. The spot fire got out in front of us, and the weather, the west winds pushed it east, hit the stringers of pine and grass and sage, and Mother Nature outdid us for a little bit. But there was a lot of hard work out there. We were all huddled up down here, listening to operations out on the ground a couple of times. They had got it with the smoke over the top of it. It was really tough where they still had plans in place to box it in. But at the end of the day, that didn't happen. Levi made the right call. It's her enough for at least some to come back in the coordination. Fire department and the sheriff's office was bar none. So really impressed by that effort. And do you have the closure map up there? Okay, well, I'll talk through the closure a little bit. So the closure that we got implemented yesterday enlarges the closure a little bit, and where it goes to the south, most of you all be familiar with this. It starts at Hell Roaring Trailhead, and then it continues west to Imogene, and then across the wilderness. The trail, that boundary trail on the southern end, is open. So you can hike from Hell Roaring Trailhead and then follow it south, and it is signed. It then will connect over to the Loman area, and then it will butt up against the Nellie Fire, and then go north following the Nellie Fire, and then up over Cape Horn, and then come around the Salmon Chalice and Alice Basin Creek, and then back around to Hell Roaring. It will follow the wilderness boundary. Redfish Lake is open. The lodge is open. And as soon as we can shrink it, we'll do so. We actually made it smaller than we originally had thought, working with operations. And hopefully I don't jinx us, but hopefully the Halstead fire slows it down a little bit as it moves in that direction. So we shrink it. A lot of that was around the archery season coming up and trying to mitigate impacts to the public. But at the end of the day, we do want to keep the public out of there so the firefighters can do their thing. And if you don't have that, you can get it from the team, you can get it from the Forest Service, so you can get that map and you can know what's going on for the foreseeable future. And the Bench Lake closure is still in place there around Bench Lake proper, adjacent to Redfish, and that will likely stay in place maybe until the snow comes. We'll see how that plays out. And Point Campground will stay closed so we can mitigate some of those big old hazard trees that are upslope. We want the winter to take care of them for us. I want to talk a little bit about the fire. So we are the #1 priority in the nation. That's not the best thing in the world, but if you need resources, that's a good thing. We have about 1,200 firefighters. That continues to grow. When they took the fire on the 24th, we had about 300 firefighters, so we were bumping up. We've got the big camp where we always have it on Valley Road. We've got a spike camp where we originally intended to have our big camp at Valley Creek, and then over in Loman we have another camp that has a significant amount of folks. So we continue to grow. This morning we had just shy of 70 engines. We have the helicopters, the scoopers, the tankers, the drones. We've got a lot of resources out on the ground. So please know that. I've said this at each meeting, but I think it's important. This is a values-driven fire. It's full suppression. But with all the values we have out here, with the communities from Sourdough to Loman, to the other places over there near Loman, to coming around the Horn, to the campgrounds, to the Boy Scout camp, and then over here to Valley Creek, Cow Lane, Iron Creek, those areas, and then, of course, Stanley and Lower Stanley. That's where we're putting our focus. And I know you all know that, but that's where we're putting our focus. We're also looking out to where this fire could go. So we're looking out to Casino Creek area. We're looking out over toward the Redfish area, the Stanley Ranger Station, and beyond. And so we're building what we call management action points. So we have a game plan in place if the fire wanted to go to those areas. You'll see, well, you won't see because you're not out there, heavy equipment, building lines around Goat Falls today and other areas, and obviously a line around the fire from that spot fire. So that's our focus. So we can't just jump out, even though we have 1,200 firefighters, and chase every smoke in the woods. They were talking about, put the operation map up. I know you got that. So they were talking about this up here, going up into Halstead, dangerous country, no real values, dead standing, not a lot of reason to put firefighters in there, unless it were to come after a value or do something different that we don't expect. The interior here, where a lot of the smoke came from yesterday, it's just eating itself up in that interior. Not a lot of values, not a lot of reasons to put a firefighter in there. It's rough country. You look over here at Whiskey, where it's moving down slope toward the Nellie fire, have some plans in place, but not a lot of values. We need to focus on our values. So you do have areas out there that are not getting the attention that the other values are, but I've been hearing that this is a let it burn deal. No, it's not a let it burn deal. We don't have a let it burn deal. So we have values and we have plans in place, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to do our damnedest to protect those values. So just wanted you to hear that from me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now we will have closing comments with our Deputy Incident Commander, Justin Conrad.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Justin Conrad, Deputy IC, Rocky Mountain Area Team 1. Kirk set me up pretty good there. I wanted to talk to you about some of our objectives going forward. Our first objective is always firefighter and public safety, all right? One of our other objectives is using the resources that we have here to protect critical values at risk. That's your homes, that's your property, that's the town of Stanley and the other towns that are affected by this fire. So we take those objectives, we take those values at risk, and then we work with those to come up with our priorities. And our priorities on top of firefighter and public safety is the community and your properties. And that's why we have 1,200 people here right now, is to protect everything that we have, that you all have around these communities. So I just wanted to share that with you, and I wanted to extend a very heartfelt thank you to the community. Everybody here has been absolutely wonderful and incredibly supportive of everything we have going on here. So we're running out of time, but I just wanted to say thank you to everyone for your help and support.
Thank you, Justin. And that does conclude our meeting for this evening. We thank you for coming out and joining us in person or online. We do have maps on the outside, so if you have any questions, go outside and we'll have information officers and others waiting to answer those questions. Thank you very much.